Are we live?
We are.
We are. Yay. Hey, everybody. This is Bondilyn Jolly, and thank you so much for joining us for part two of our three-part webinar series with the lovely Valerie Garcia, who is dialing in from the very, very cold Toronto today. So, Valerie, thanks so much for coming back and being a part of this webinar with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you and I, we've had several conversations about content, and of course, so many of the agents and brokers that we both work with are always just struggling with content. I think content it's the yin and yang. It's necessary. Content is king, but we also are very, very challenged with developing content. And so we really, thought that just dedicating an entire hour to talking about content in every single aspect that we possibly could would be a good idea. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. We've got 1 hour to cover a week's worth of probable material that Valerie and I have. But Melissa is running a slide deck for us. And Melissa, if you could hit the next slide. I just wanted to start it by opening up with this. LinkedIn actually just recently did a survey asking its users about how they develop content. We lost that slide deck. There we go. Thanks. How they develop content and do they have content strategies. And I just want everyone out there to know that you are not alone, and the real estate sector is not isolated in the struggle with content, because this was actually the results that came in from that LinkedIn survey. So even though there was a lot of people that do feel that they have a content strategy, 42%, almost half of the people out there really say it's undocumented. And then there's another quarter that does not have any kind of content strategy or not sure, which to me would definitely fall into no. But I just thought that was interesting. And then Melissa, if you could actually hit the next slide as well. Also, that came out of some surveys that were done this past year. They asked people, what were they looking for in terms of content creation and education, and 73%, so 3/4 of people said they were really, looking to create more engaging content and really struggling with that. Also, over half were asking for a better understanding of what content is effective and what isn't. So we're going to talk about some of that today. And then, of course, our third webinar with Valerie, we're going to be digging into actually how to analyze and understand how your audience is engaging with your content and responding to it. So we'll touch on that a little today and then dig really deep into that next month. Creating visual content, we're going to share some information about visual versus textual video. We're going to cover all of that today. Finding more or better ways to repurpose content we're going to discuss today, and then also content optimization. So everyone across every industry is struggling with content, and so we're just going to dig in. We're going to be very specific in terms of content with the real estate industry today, but please note that you are not alone in your struggles. Valerie, do you have anything to add to that before we jump in?
No, I think that's a pretty accurate representation of what we're looking at on the screen right now. I think a lot of people just start out with what do I post, or what do I write, what do I say, and then how do I make it effective, and how do I make it work for the algorithms, which is really the visual stuff, and then how do I repurpose it and use it in a better way. So honestly, those are the top questions I hear, and I'm excited to dive into some of these thoughts.
This is awesome. So everyone, just a couple of notes. You have a chat bar on your window. Please feel free, if you have questions or comments or anything like that you'd like to share with Valerie or myself, just type them into the chat bar. We will be taking some time at the end of the webinar to do Q&A, but that being said, as we go along, if you have a question or you want us to stop and expand on a particular topic while we are, discussing it, just type to us in the chat bar. We're going to try to honor as many questions as we can over the hour. Also, if you have any kind of audio problems or anything like that, just let us know. We've got some different moderators online with us who can help you address any questions like that you might have. And there will be a recording of today's webinar available, and we also have some free downloads we're going to be sending you as follow-up. So if you missed something, if you want to revisit the webinar, not a problem. It will be available to you, and we'll be sending out an email after the webinar with all of the links that you need. All right. I think that's all of the housekeeping notes. So let's go ahead and jump in. And I'm just going to throw this first question out at you. Melissa, if you can hit the next slide. This is one of the questions that I am constantly asked. And Valerie, I know you are too. Curated content versus custom content. What should I do? Should I use curated content? If I am, how should I be using it? Should I always be developing custom content? What do I do?
So before we answer that, just in case, because we don't want to assume everybody knows what we mean by that, let's define what that is. So curated is essentially where you're taking other people's stuff and you're sharing it. That's really it. Simplistically, you're finding great articles that other people have written or that have been published on the internet and other places, and you're sharing links or you're resharing pieces of their content. Custom is something that you create that's original. It's your own content. You've written it or you've taken that photo. I think there has to be a mix. There really has to be a mix between curated and custom, because if you say everything I create is going to be custom, you're going to burn out. You have to create so much stuff to stay on top of that, or you're going to get into a situation where you just aren't sharing on a consistent basis. You're not putting stuff out there because of the pressure to constantly create something. So I think a good mix. I think that, could I give you an exact ratio that everybody should follow? It's going to be different for everyone, but I try and do one piece of curated content and two pieces of custom content. And for me, custom content could be something really simple and personal and a joke. Custom doesn't mean it has to be this 900-word blog post. It doesn't have to be, a video that's professionally done. It's just something that's just yours and original. And so I try to stick to that 1-to-2 ratio. But again, I think it's, if you did it the other way around, you did 2 pieces of curated and 1 piece of custom, I think that would be a really good ratio to follow.
Yeah, I know one thing, we actually have a content library that is inside of the eMerge platform for all of our subscribers. And so we develop custom content for that library, but we also curate content from, just dozens and dozens of different resources all around the internet. One of our big things when we're working with our brokers and agents on sharing curated content is, first of all, making sure that whatever you're sharing is relevant, for the audience that you're sharing it with, but then also finding a way to personalize it. So if it's an article, say, from in the news, or it's how-to and decorating tips that I want to share from House and Garden, or whatever the case is, as long as I make it relevant and add some kind of personalization. Why am I sharing this article? What does it mean to me? Or what does it mean to my audience? And I think that really helps, people understand, okay, this is why Bondilyn is sharing this article. This is what she, thinks I'm going to get out of it. And that's usually a good way to also encourage conversation too.
Oh my gosh, yes. And so important to mention that, because so many people, they curate by just sharing a post, right? So they share it, but they don't add anything personal to it. And that's really where the value is for you to say, hey, I loved this article because, or this might be relevant to you or important to you because it talks about this, or this is really timely for this reason. I think I had this kind of marked down to say later, but there has to be a call to action. In everything we do, there has to be a why, has to be a reason. Without that, people don't pay attention. We're just so inundated with messaging that if there's not a what's in it for me or a why attached, we don't pay attention anymore. And so I do think it's so important that when we're curating, that we add or attach that why.
Yeah, and I know you and I had talked about that last month in our webinar. Particularly when you're sharing on social media. Social media is really it's a personal engagement between you and your audience, and there has to be a reason that the audience is paying attention and following you in the first place. And so making sure that you're making it feel personal and that you're not just pushing. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, canned content." I'm like, you know what? We have an amazing library of canned content, but we coach you on the best way to utilize that content, to repurpose that content and use it to provide value to your audience, and as well as enhance your overall engagement across your channels.
Yeah, totally. And I've curated a ton of canned content over the years. I share it and save it Evernote files and on Pinterest, and I have those there for when I get stuck or when I get lost for custom content. But I go back and I say, oh, this is really relevant to something that's happening right now, or this is how it might resonate with people. And so canned content is not a bad thing. It's just how often you use it and whether you add something to it.
Right. And I like how when you talked about custom, you said it doesn't need to be a 900-word blog post. Because I think that so many people are just overwhelmed with the idea that they have to create this, these large scale. Now, it's interesting because I saw some statistics on, long form blogging, and for people that are successful and very consistent at doing that, they have very, very high engagement rates. But, even with our blog is a mix of long form, it's short. Sometimes we'll even take and repurpose somebody else's article, but we talk about, injecting our own customization to, why is it relevant? Why, how do we make it personal about us and our audience? And so there's just a million different ways that you can look. So you don't have to be, Hemingway in order to be creating, unique and custom content.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, so true. Do you remember last month, and for any of you that joined us, I thought it was kind of interesting when we talked about one of a broker that you and I both know, Valerie, Jimmy Doolin up in Indiana. He does a lot of recruiting inside of his office in conjunction with his partner. And I always love to share the Jimmy story because outside of being a fantastic broker, he's also a very, very accomplished chef. And so he creates a lot of custom content, videos, images, and just quick posts for his social media where he shares his, culinary experiences. And he has said that content, that culinary, experience content has been more valuable in starting conversations with prospective agents than any real estate or industry specific content that he's put out there. And I think it's because it's personal to him. He's excited and vibrant when he shares it. It's an interesting story to follow. And we get to see who Jimmy is outside of that professional business person. And, everybody's got to eat. Everybody loves food. So it's just a wonderful way for him to connect with his audience.
Yeah, so true. And so true. We have to think about the fact that we're people, not just professionals, and that we share stuff that makes us human and share stuff that makes people relate to us. And I think that's so important because when we don't do that, people forget. They don't have that thing, that story that's stuck in their mind. When people talk to me and I meet them all over the place, they go, oh my gosh, I remember that story you shared about your grams or about your family or about your travels. And we relate to stories as human beings. People remember stories. That's how we learn. And so if we're not sharing some of those stories or some of that personal stuff, they're not going to remember us the same way. They're not going to feel like they know us and that we're personal to them the same way. So it's so important that we do add that stuff. And you're so right. Jimmy talks about food. And when I think about Jimmy, I think about the fact that he has a kitchen in every one of his offices because he values the food experience and the shared food experience. So, that's definitely something we have to think about and think about what is that thing that we want people to know us for and that we want to, use to explain who we are as a human being, and then really tap into that in the way that we talk to our audience and tell our stories.
It's very true. For me, I'm a mix of, I have two just amazing children. I'm totally unbiased with that. But I love to share stories about my family, what my kids are doing, as well as what I'm doing professionally, where I'm traveling to. And it's true, those are all wonderful conversation starters. They're wonderful ways for me to connect, with my clients, with my colleagues, and just everybody knows who I am. They know who I am as a professional and as a person, and I blend the two together. And I just think, when you're putting out content that really helps you connect and have the audience feel connected to you. Look at the celebrities that do that so well. They can take and make 1 million people or 10 million people feel like you're literally sitting in, their living room having a conversation with you, right? They just make you feel so welcome into, your life and your story. And I think that whenever you're there's nothing I think that you can put out there that can't be converted into really wonderful, qualifying conversations.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, that being said, actually, I do have one note. I'm going to stop myself. I'm going to correct myself because I made a notation because we get questions about this. Our opinions on addressing controversial content subjects, politics, particularly in such a polarized nation right now. Topics that tend to push people's trigger buttons. Valerie, what are your thoughts on, what would constitute controversial content and sharing that?
Well, gosh, what isn't controversial these days? Everything. I kind of feel like you can talk about anything. It depends on how you do it. We hear this around the holidays, right? Oh, now's the time to go to Thanksgiving and not talk to your uncle about anything because you're going to get into an argument. And I think, well, I feel like your audience knows you and should get to know you. I'm not a big fan of hate posting or negativity for the sake of it. But I do feel like people have opinions and people are passionate about things. And I necessarily am not always going to agree with them. But I think if you do it in a professional and kind way, you can almost talk about any topic. I don't know. This is a hard one because not everybody is capable of having those kind and professional conversations about topics, and those people definitely should stay away from those things. But I also feel like, let's not talk big politics, but let's talk local stuff. Let's talk bylaws and community action groups, and let's talk about getting involved in your community and pushing for change. And, my community right now, there's a faction that is they're fighting transit. And there are other people that are so supportive of new transit options in our community that are healthy and that are, going to help our community grow. And I feel like we have to get involved in those conversations. We have to take a side. We have to be proactive in helping our communities grow. That could be considered political in some cases. Some people could say that's the kind of stuff that, we should just stay away from. But, I think we have to judge those situations on a singular basis and say, is this an opportunity for me to show that I am involved in my community and that I do care and that I have passions, and can I do it in a way that's kind and professional and productive?
Right. And I think it's true. You want to talk about, who you are as a person, right? You want to be able to share your morals, your ethics, your values, but you also need to look at too, who is your audience? Who am I trying to work with? And, if I put this, potentially controversial subject out there and start a discussion on it, am I going to be able to continue that discussion in a professional manner that is going to be both positive for myself and my audience? And I think that, like you said, is unique to every single person in every single instance. I see people who can handle that very, very well. I see people who have literally lost large respect of their audience because they really took people down a communication path that there was never going to be any positive outcome with that.
Yep.
So there was actually a recent consumer survey that came out, and Melissa, if you can hit the next slide for me, they actually asked consumers, and I think this was North America, so I think it was US and Canada, and they asked them what content types would you like to see more of in the future. And so I thought this was kind of interesting to share because I know we're talking about a lot of these different types of content today. But social posts, almost 50% of people said they really, enjoy social posts. Once again, Valerie, I think, they're short snippets. If they're done well, they can be very personal. People can connect with them very easily. Social posts are easily engaged with from my mobile, from my tablet, whatever the case. Same with news articles. And then videos. And I know we're going to talk a little bit, just specifically about the power of video and the growth of video and how to use that effectively for content. But I wanted to share this because I thought everybody would like this. And I know it's funny because podcasts, I was interested to see podcasts ranked at the bottom of that survey. Does that surprise you, Valerie?
No, this survey doesn't shock me at all because when you look at it, the top three are things that have really good. So I can do something with one click. I can make it with one click. I can typically skim through it very quickly. With a video, it's not going to last very long, hopefully. and I can push it out to people. If I think it's interesting, I can share it with people. When you look at those top three, that makes a lot of sense to me. When you look at the bottom three, you're looking at long form content, stuff you have to spend a lot of time listening to. And quite honestly, we don't have the attention spans anymore. And I think when we're thinking about creating content for our own marketing, for our own business, we really need to remember this graphic. So people that are watching this call right now or are watching the recording, take a look at the stuff you're creating and think, is it shareable? Is it snackable? Is it really quick to consume? Or is it one of those things where we're expecting people to invest a whole lot of time into it? Because chances are we're not there's still 21% there that are saying they want to see that kind of content. There's a time and place for that, but people want to see more of the stuff that's really quick, really easy to consume, and really easy to share.
Right. And I know we're going to talk about repurposing content, but I'm just going to mention, with us, we might write a long form blog and we might write one, maybe two a month, but then we take and we repurpose that and make it, we process it in smaller bite-sized chunks that we share across our social channels, that we put out in emails, because I find, when we do put out our long form blogs, we have really fantastic engagement with them, but it's because it's once a month. We have, a loyal following with that. And then we can also feed people, key takeaways and bite-sized snippets from all of that to get our messaging across for the people that don't have that attention span. But the podcast did surprise me a little, because we hear so much talk, even, in the real estate industry, about, podcasting, and there's some really great real estate podcasts that are out there. I've actually subscribed to a lot of them, but you know what? I'm guilty of not listening to them with the frequency that I originally intended.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of it is exactly that. We have good intentions. We think, how many of us buy books that sit there and we don't read them? But part of the problem too is that we market to people in a way that we wouldn't want to be marketed to a lot of the time. We think, hey, this is the buzzword right now, so I'm going to create a podcast. We don't listen to podcasts ourselves, and so I think we do have to think about, how do we consume information most frequently, and make sure that we're a little bit at least diversifying the way that we're putting information out.
Cool. So I had to throw that one stat in at the bottom of the slide, because obviously I work in email automation. But I thought this was interesting when I was preparing all of these slides and looking at the statistics, that actually 64% of companies rated email marketing as the most effective channel for delivering their content, with social media actually being second. So I wanted to share that, because obviously I want everybody using eMerge. But I thought that was interesting too. And, one thing that is really effective for us is that when we work with our clients to put out an email that has links out to a lot of different relevant content and things they want to share, that email can sit in my inbox, and maybe I receive it in the morning. I don't have time to look at it until that evening, but, I can keep it there, and then I can engage with that content, at my convenience and at my schedule. And I think that's one of the, aspects that really keeps email very, very relevant versus social. If I see something in my feed and I don't have time to look at it, unfortunately, if I come back an hour later or 2 hours later, a lot of times I can have a hard time finding that in my feed. And so I think that, that's why we do tend to see that email is very, very big in delivering content and then linking people out, as a resource to their social channels, to blogs, to news articles, and some of those key content types that are on that list.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Melissa, we got to keep moving on. You're helping us stay on task here. So hit us with the next slide, ma'am. Frequency and consistency. Valerie, we were asked this last month in our first webinar. It is always a challenge. People are always concerned, if they decide, okay, I've got some content I want to share. I've got a schedule, maybe I'm looking at how much should I share over the course of a week, a month, each day. So let's dig in. And I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, so I'm going to tee it up and let you take off and run with it.
Gosh, I think a lot of people are just, they ask this question because they expect there to be some sort of magic formula that they can follow. So they say, tell me exactly what I should post and when and how frequently and how often and where. It really is going to depend on your audience. It's going to depend on how they consume it and how often. And really, at some point, you have to learn to read your audience and understand what's working and what's not. If you're posting the same kind of things all the time and nobody's liking it, no one's looking at it, no one's engaging with you, you're missing the mark, and it's time to change it up. And a lot of the times we blame the algorithms, or we blame, Facebook, it's too busy, there's too much crap, so no one's seeing my stuff. It also could be that we're putting out the wrong stuff. When we talk frequency and consistency, a lot of it is just trial and error. There's no magic wand anywhere where somebody's going to say, if you post 3 times a day on Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, but on Fridays you post twice a day at this time, that stuff is crap. You're going to see, all kinds of stuff out there where people have said, this is the best time of day to post. There are some great rules of thumb that maybe, yes, we can follow there, but the reality is we try something, we adjust, and if it works, that's great. We try and replicate it. I think consistency is so much more important than frequency. If you can post once a day or once a week even, or even if you just send out something once a month, but it's really good and it's consistent and people can depend on it and expect it and they look forward to it, then, absolutely you can get away with that. We're not just talking posting either. We're talking emails. We're talking newsletters. We're talking how often do you reach out to your leads? It has to be on a consistent basis. I get the newspaper still at my house every Thursday morning. That's my local paper, and I expect it because it has coupons in it. And that's what I use to go and do my grocery shopping on the weekend. I see what's on sale, and that depends. That's how I whatever. I grew up on a farm. That's kind of how it works. But I wait for the coupons. That's sort of just my habit. If the newspaper doesn't come on Thursday, if one week it came on Tuesday and then the next week it came on Friday, I would get frustrated because I'm habitually used to that. And so we kind of have to think about that when it comes to our posting. I always say, whatever you do, if you can do it with consistency, it doesn't matter how much of it there is. If you look at Seth Godin's blog. Seth Godin's blog is a perfect example of this. Sometimes his blog is 3 sentences long, and that's his daily post, but it's every day. Every single day, first thing in the morning, he posts, and he posts something that's brilliant and wonderful, and sometimes it's a paragraph long, and sometimes it's 2 sentences, but it's every single day, and I look forward to it, and so I pay attention to it. So I think that's something we have to think about. I mean, I also think that we have to make sure that we're not just consistent in a frequency sort of way, we're consistent in our voice, so that when you get something from me and you open my newsletter, you know what to expect. You know what my tone is. You're going to know what my personality feels like. You're going to know the kind of information I'm going to share with you. So you're going to go, gosh, I love getting these newsletters because they're always so informative, or they're always so funny, or they're always so whatever. There's some consistency there that you know what to expect. This is why we, PVR shows, and we expect to watch the same show every week because we know the kind of writing and we know the kind of suspense that we're going to get. So we enjoy it because it's consistent.
That's true. And, you and I talked last time, we talked about, start with why. And I think it's important when you're thinking about, okay, what kind of content am I going to put out? What is that voice going to be? And with what frequency am I going to put it out there? You have to go back, why am I doing this in the first place? Why am I sending this email? Why am I posting this social post? Why am I doing this? What is my intention? And, we're always working with our agents and brokers to say, okay, you have these leads. We're going to nurture these leads. Why are we nurturing them? Because we want them to convert into business. We want them to convert into a conversation that may start online, but moves to the telephone, moves to in person, and ultimately moves us down a conversion funnel, right? And so I think a lot of times people will lose that why. Why am I even creating and developing and sharing content? And so just always start with that, is this piece of content I'm creating and sharing with this audience, does it make sense for this audience? Is it relevant? Is it timely? Is it consistent with the voice that I usually speak to this audience in? And I think if you ask yourself those basic questions and just make sure that you're always validating, and justifying that reason, I think you're always going to have success.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a local politician here who made it a goal last year to door knock and get face-to-face with every single person in their voting precinct. And they made a quote that was published that I absolutely love. And they said, when you're door knocking, with people, it feels like you're just visiting friends. And I thought, gosh, like that's what our marketing should feel like. We shouldn't feel like we're posting stuff for the sake of posting stuff. We shouldn't feel like we're sending emails to our prospects or our leads for the sake of doing it. We should feel like we're visiting with friends and that we're talking about stuff that we love and that we're passionate about and that we care about. Because when we do that, it's super easy. It's not like this, oh my God, what am I going to post today? Or what am I going to put in this newsletter? It's so painful. I'm so excited to share this information because this is the stuff I actually care about. And when you look at it that way, content becomes totally different. It doesn't feel like a chore or work. It feels like I'm really excited to share this stuff.
That's true. And I also think while we're on the topic of frequency and consistency, I think, you have to look at the audience too. Like with our agents, we work with them to set up campaigns for, their active buyers and sellers, but we also want to take all of their past clients and put them into, referral ask and reconnect campaigns and things like that. And so, there's no formula that fits everyone. So when we're looking at engaging past clients, we might want to reach out and touch them maybe, 1 month, past a conversion, and then maybe we don't reach out to them again for 3 months, or we, invite them to opt into an informational or educational newsletter that maybe you send out monthly and allow them the option to raise their hand and participate. Whereas our active buyers and sellers, the frequency of engagement needs to be much higher. There's a lot greater need on both sides for engagement. And so I think you have to look at that. And I know, every one of our clients that comes in with us, we look at, okay, who is your sphere? How can we break these people up into different listing groups? And then how can we create, a consistent outreach schedule for them? And then how can we help you analyze it and see how it's performing for you too? So there's quite a few, parts and pieces with all of that. And I know we're trying to touch on a lot of that today, but once again, there's never one answer that fits everyone, unfortunately.
Yeah, I always say, look, a lead is simply just a person who has put up their hand and said, I have a question. And when we look at it that way, our goal in staying in touch with our leads or our prospects, whatever you want to call them, it's not to annoy them. It's not to continually bombard them with information until they call us. It's not like we want them to go, okay, uncle, white flag, I give up, I'll call you. We want to, our goal is to help them get enough information so that they feel confident taking the next step. And so the way we do that is we answer all of those questions we know they have, even if they don't know what those questions are yet. And that's our job. Is as professionals, we know that first-time home buyers have a litany of questions that they normally ask. And so our marketing and content should be focused on helping people, educating them, teaching them things they don't know, solving their problems and meeting their needs. Because when we do that, we're more likely for them to go, you're giving me all the information I need. I feel super confident taking the next step. Help me. Instead of, oh my gosh, stop bombarding me with crap I don't need. And that's really the difference in content. Is we have to look at, does this mean something to people we're sending it to? And it doesn't matter what it says about us.
I love that. That is very well stated. And, another thing I just want to add with that too is, when you establish a relationship with a lead, ask them, what can I provide you? Ask them questions. What can I provide you? How would you like to receive communication from me? Do you want me to text you? Do you want me to email you? Do you want me to share it through, Facebook Messenger, whatever the case is? Like, always ask people. I love it. I'm working with a real estate agent out here in the Los Angeles market right now. And I love it because she started sending me listings. I was getting them every single day. And then she reached out to me and said, hey, how am I overwhelming you with these listings? And I said, you know what? You are. Like, I feel like I can't look at them every day. Can you just, once a week, send me kind of a composite of everything? And if there's something that comes on, the market that you feel I really need to look at immediately, send that to me. But, otherwise put me on a once a week touch. And it's just been so much easier because on the weekends I can sit down, my husband and I can sit down, we can look through it. We're doing some investment stuff. So it's not, it's kind of more casual for us. We can look at everything. We can make choices, have conversations, and do it once a week.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we've got to stay on task. Melissa, I need you to move us along here. Next slide, please. So I get asked this all the time, Valerie, visual versus textual. And I thought it was interesting if, Melissa, you'll click immediately to the next slide. I found some interesting stats. I actually found this that I thought was interesting. When you're giving people directions and you use illustrations to complement the text, people are 323% better at following directions when accompanied with imagery. I thought that was really, really interesting. And the other stat, that 65% of consumers retain information better when accompanied with visual elements. I don't think this comes as any surprise to either of us, Valerie.
No, I mean, I think if you're educating or you're trying to impart information, you can't, you simply can't leave out images or imagery of some sort at this point. We are very visual learners, and we've kind of been trained to be even more so because of the internet. We're so used to seeing stuff and consuming it through our eyeballs, more so than our earballs these days. But we really have to think about that when we're trying to educate. I think where we can kind of deviate from this, though, is when we're trying to entertain. I find that every once in a while, if I just post something that's funny, in my mind, hilarious, and I don't put a picture with it, I get a ton of engagement on it because people are sometimes a little bit overwhelmed with scrolling through so many visuals. The opposite is true now, that when something's just simple, it stands out. And Apple really figured this out, right? Simple stands out when everything is noise. And so when you look at their marketing and stuff, it is really simplistic. And so I think it's important that we kind of have a mix of this too. We have visuals and images when it helps us to prove a point. And where this really makes the most difference is when we're putting infographics together of really important stats that would otherwise be a whole list of boring stats. So things like days on market and market conditions, and types of properties that are the most in demand in a neighborhood. All of that kind of information, those kind of stats, can seem really boring. When we put them with images, it becomes a little more interesting. But when you're trying to just impart a simple piece of information, or just make somebody's day or make them smile, sometimes simple can be better. It's really interesting. This is where you can find your mix.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up infographics, because it reminds me when I was compiling all these stats last night, do you know that infographics have the highest number of reshares of any imagery type across the internet?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that was interesting.
And there's so many great, templates to create those and drop those into your social content. Canva has templates for those. And PictoChart, which is PIKTOCHART, both of those have really, really great templates where you can create a really simple infographic, which is just information on top of images, and share that or drop those into your newsletters and your regular email campaigns. That kind of stuff is gold because people visually want to consume the information.
Wait, you don't have to be a Photoshop wizard in order to create an infographic?
No. So many tools out there now. You don't have to be a Photoshop wizard for anything.
I know. Isn't that great? There are a ton of amazing apps that are out there. And actually, just so everybody knows, the apps that Valerie just mentioned, we'll make sure that we include those in our takeaways for you. And everybody will get access to all these stats and all this good stuff too. So don't worry about that. So while we're talking about imagery and all of that kind of stuff, Melissa, hit us with the next one. Video. We have to talk about video and the power of video. Oh my God, Facebook live stream, YouTube. There is absolutely no question about the power of video. And I know so many people are so intimidated by creating content, by doing exactly what you and I are doing right now, Valerie, putting our mugs out there, making everybody look at us. And you are so fantastic at creating and executing fantastic live videos. So why don't you tell us a little bit from your perspective? And Melissa, I'm going to ask you to switch to the next slide while Valerie is talking. There's just some statistics here that I thought people might be interested in looking at and we'll be referencing.
I think you're so right. Video is so important. We're so inundated with it. It just becomes second nature at this point. We expect there to be a video explaining everything. We expect to be able to YouTube everything. We're just, why, in some cases, we think, why should I read this when I could just watch a video about it really quickly? That being said, I also think that we can overdo it. I probably wouldn't have said that a couple years ago, but I think there's a line where sometimes you can put a video out, but sometimes the most pertinent information in the video you should also have in text, because not everyone's going to watch the video and they still want to be able to have the choice. So I think that's important too. But, to be honest, video isn't rocket science. It's just simply getting over the fact that you think you look ugly on camera. And in all honesty, it's doing it anyway, even though you think you look ugly on camera. And realizing we are our worst critics is really the first step, because we get to the point where we think, gosh, this is how I look, and this is how it is. Smile and be yourself and get over it. That's really the hardest part. And I say that laughingly, but it is really hard. We both sit here and we look at ourselves and think, gosh, do I really look that way? Like, why does my hair part?
I don't look at myself.
But, it really is just a matter of getting used to it. But it's also not feeling like everything has to be a video. It can have a mix. Again, like, everything doesn't have to be one way. You don't have to do videos all the time. Where I really enjoy, again, it comes back to passion. When I really enjoy doing a video, it's when I'm talking about something that I'm actually really excited or passionate about, because it comes through, right? Those are the videos I look back on and I think, I actually like watching that because I'm having fun. I'm laughing. I'm talking about stuff that I care about. I'm being myself. The videos that I hate are the ones where I'm really tense and I'm really frustrated because I'm not saying all the words properly and I'm in my head and I'm thinking too much about what I look like. It's really about finding that comfort level of, hey, I'm just really trying to help people here, and people are going to overlook the mess ups and the mistakes, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and just, give it a try.
The first Facebook Live video I did, I was so anxious before I did that. I had sweaty palms. I was like, oh my God, because you're putting it out there. And, if you screw up and you fumble, it's live. There's no going back and editing or retaking that. And it was I was really anxious about it. And you know what? Like you said, I just went and I did it and I had a lot of fun. And, it wasn't perfect. But I think that was also part of what made it fun and enjoyable, is that as soon as you kind of overcome that stigma that I have to be that consummate perfect, everything has to be so perfectly spoken, and just and go for it, And I see, so Teresa Mitchell commented, she says, I'm going on local TV tomorrow and almost bailed, but thought, what a great way to get some new clients. And so you're going to be talking, she says she's talking about Christmas tree pickup that she organized for her son's hockey team. But she's going to be wearing her Remax, a Remax branded shirt. So Teresa, I love that. That is fantastic. And, this is exactly what we were talking about, Valerie. She's talking about a local community initiative, her involvement in it. She's telling people on local television how they can get involved with it. And then, of course, she's got her name out there. She's got the Remax brand out there. I absolutely love that, Teresa. You're rocking. Thank God you didn't bail.
But I know Teresa, and I know she's going to kill it and be amazing. But the thing is again, it's getting out there and being yourself, and you're going to attract the people that are going to be attracted to that authenticity. We talk all the time about authenticity, but then we try and dress it up and put a suit on it and make it perfect. But that's not what it is. So your content, and we're not just talking video. Like, your content doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like everyone else's. It doesn't have to be, professionally created. It just has to be real and authentic and consistent. That's the magic wand. Don't tell anyone. That's the secret.
Well, so let's talk about a video tour of a house listing. So, I live out in Los Angeles, and I will tell you what, there are some of the most unbelievable video house tours out here like I have ever seen. Of course, when you're selling a $125 million, mansion, it makes sense to invest $40,000-$50,000 to create this. But, I've also seen, we've got a broker that I work with in Kansas City, Pat Grace, and he literally will go out there, a Facebook Live video. It's freezing cold wherever he is. He's got a warm hat on. He's all bundled up. He's on the street, pointing to a listing behind him, talking about it. It's just so real and it's so raw and it's just live and in that moment. And it's just so much fun, to watch that. So what are your opinions? Because we get a lot of people that talk to us about how to present their listings and even if it's, talking about a just sold or an interview with a happy client. And I think that there's just a million ways that you can go about that. If you don't have that $40,000 budget for that multi-million-dollar house, it doesn't matter. Just find that voice, find that method of how you want to convey your messaging and just be consistent and go with it. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when video for listings first started, I think some of those really ritzy California agents kind of did a little disservice to the industry by making people feel like, gosh, if my house isn't beautiful, it doesn't have an infinity pool, and I don't have a model walking through and playing the grand piano, that I just can't do video. And the reality is, and what's interesting is one of those ritzy California agents is the one that taught me this. He said, marketing is just telling a story, and our job is just to find the story. And every house and every client has a story. We just have to find out what it is. We may be selling houses that don't have infinity pools and grand pianos, but there's a story behind that house. It might be as simple as the backyard has this amazing tire swing, or it's a great place to ride your bikes in the cul-de-sac, or whatever it is. We don't have to have the same story or style anybody else does. Our marketing should reflect wherever or whatever we are. And so I think that's really important, is to find the story. So loving the idea of, somebody standing out in sub-zero temperatures in a hat, because that's where they live and that's what people are going to relate to. Some of my favorite marketing is not pictures of, living rooms, because we've seen a bazillion of those. It's the picture of, the marks behind the laundry room door that's shown the kids growing up that lived in that house 50 years ago, and that those are still there, and that those are going to come with the house. And that's kind of a cool story. So we don't have to focus on all the fancy stuff all the time. It can be simple, and it can be normal, and it can be everyday life,
I like that. And it's true, it's such an emotional journey for people, whether I mentioned this last month when we talked, when we sold our home in New Orleans that we had lived in for 18 years. We'd gone through Hurricane Katrina. We completely remodeled. We had both of our children were born there. It was so emotional for us. And I love that you actually mentioned the notches, because my husband literally cut out that section of wall and framed it and gave it to me last year at Christmas, and had this whole wall replaced before the buyers took over the house, because I was sobbing in tears that I was leaving those markings behind of my children and our master bedroom. Actually, I'll share a picture of it. I'll take a picture of it and put it on my social channels after this to show everybody what he did, how he cut that out and framed that and gave that to me as a gift, because it meant so much and it was so emotional. And, so many times as agents or brokers, we're just so focused on, the business aspect of it. This is a lead and I need to sell this house and I need to make this commission. And you forget the emotional journey that it is for your buyers and sellers, and being able to really, to focus on that and create content and an experience around that, I think is really, really key.
Yeah. And I think we also think that, we have to be these professionals when really we remember the emotional, and we understand how hard it is when everything you own is in a cardboard box and you can't find the toilet paper and all you want is a pizza and to sit on the floor because you're exhausted because you've been moving. It's been my life the last 2 weeks. But those moments are the moments where you can say, look, I totally get it. Moving sucks. Let me give you some of my best tips or something that's going to help you make it easier. When we can be the heroes in those small moments, when our marketing hits the mark like that because we're being real, it's so much better than when we're trying to be contrived and trying to be, these fancy real estate professionals. People are going to relate to us just as we are.
I like that. If you look at the final stat I posted here, it says how-to searches grew by 70% over the past year. And I really wanted to make sure we shared that because I was thinking, how cool would it be if I was an agent to actually have a series where I'm like, from everything from, staging to getting my financing in place to even, do you know that 85% of new homeowners order pizza their first night in the house? Mm-hmm. 85%, and so there's just so many neat ways that we can provide value. And I was like, God, I'm like, agents could be putting out just such amazing, helpful, resourceful content, whether by video or within their blog or website or on their social channels. And then I started thinking, brokers, like, we have agents who are constantly, always struggling with these, questions about how to handle certain circumstances. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if like a broker as part of their recruitment and retention models were actually providing, valuable how-to, information for their agents. I got really excited when I saw that stat.
Well, I mean, so many of us have robots in our houses now. I'm not going to say her name because she'll hear me, but a lot of us have these little things that sit on our desk where we say, how do I do this? And what temperature is it outside? And, where can I fly this weekend for whatever? They live in our house now. They listen to us. And so we're getting really programmed to saying, where can I find whatever? We're used to having these robots answer us now. And so if we're thinking about content, that's one of the best tips out there is start your blogs and title the subject lines of your emails with how do I this or how do I that? The most frequently asked questions that you get, because people are going to relate to that immediately. They're going to open that. They're going to read it. And that stuff, even as blog posts and videos, are going to start to come up in those searches when, you say, hey, Google, tell me how do I, get pre-approved? Because you'd be surprised how many people are using those kind of tools for that kind of stuff these days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, and I'm glad that you mentioned like the subject line, because actually email subject lines that ask a question or actually provide like a, how do I do this kind of question actually have very, very high open and engagement rates. And that's actually one of the things that we'll work with our agents and brokers on. It's like, okay, how do we frame the subject, the email subject to drive, higher engagement for you? And questions are always a great way to do that. So I love it.
Because it's doing the golden rule of marketing, which is educating, informing, entertaining, and solving a problem, right? And marketing is just helping people figure something out that they didn't even know they needed to figure out.
It's so true. All right, we've got just a few minutes left. We've got a few more slides to go through here. So we're going to keep moving along. Melissa, if you will take us to the next slide, repurposing content. Thoughts on this? Some people get concerned over repurposing content, whether it's custom or curated, about, they get it hung up on optimization and different things like that. Valerie, what's your words of advice in considering repurposing content?
I think you should do it and do it often. I think repurposing is so important because people have short attention spans. They're only going to consume what's really relevant to them right now. And also save yourself some work. So when you write something, break it up into little pieces, and maybe one is a tweet, and one is an Instagram post, and one you're putting on Facebook, and parts of it are a blog, and maybe make a video about it. You don't have to come up with a fresh new idea about everything all the time. Just break it up into little bite-sized pieces. Think of it as a charcuterie tray, or, you've got meats and cheeses and crackers and whatever, and all of that makes up a meal, but you've got little pieces that you can use in different ways. I write a blog post and I think, gosh, I'm going to post this part of this as an image on Instagram, and I'm going to tweet a piece of it, and a little bit of it I'm going to put on a Facebook post, but I'm going to put the whole thing in my newsletter. And then that's one idea repurposed 5 different ways. And then 3 months from now, I'm going to bring that idea back and I'm going to put a seasonal spin on it. So here were my ideas for, freshening up your front door, but I'm going to do a new version in the springtime, freshening up your front steps in the spring. Same ideas, but, a little bit different spin. Again, don't stress yourself out about coming up with fresh new stuff all the time. Just change the image, change the title, change a little piece of it, or take a little piece of it and put it in there a different way. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to come up with new stuff constantly when we can just take the stuff that we have and reuse it a little bit differently. It's like taking an outfit and putting a different shirt under your suit.
Exactly. And I was saying earlier, that's what, in terms of repurposing, we'll write a long form blog post and then we'll take, little bits and pieces from that blog post and, put those little bite-sized pieces out on our social channels. And, we'll have 2 weeks worth of social content just from repurposing, parts and pieces of a blog article. And another thing too is like, I'm just be honest, I'm repurposing with you guys today. One of the downloads we have available for all of you guys today is 6 emails every real estate agent should be sending. This was actually our #1 most engaged blog post from 2017. It was very, very popular. It's very, educational. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to repurpose this because everybody that is in this webinar, whether you read this blog post when we put it out earlier, this past year or not, there is value in revisiting that content to say, hey, am I doing these things? Maybe I implemented 1 of those 6. Maybe it's time I can start taking those baby steps to doing more. And so we repurpose all the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so true.
And let's see, Teresa says, Teresa, she's really chatty with us today. People love updates. Example, here's what the problem was last year. Here is what has happened since. That's really great, Teresa. And that, you can take that looking at things inside of like your local markets, your community, as well as on a national spectrum. So that idea like, hey, at this time last year, we were all experiencing this. Here's what we're all experiencing now kind of thing. So that's a great suggestion. I love that. Okay, so in our last couple of minutes, I'm going to pose a question to you, Valerie. Melissa, if you'll click us to that slide. The question is, I'm asked this all the time, should I hire a content creator? What are the pros and cons?
Well, it depends on what kind of content. I mean, I think that's if you're looking to have someone professionally design your logo, your imagery that you're going to use to represent your company. You're going to have everything sort of customized so that, your folders match your business cards and all of your professional print content. Yes, I think you should hire somebody unless that happens to be your wheelhouse. When it comes to your day-to-day, if you're looking at someone who's going to if you're looking at outsourcing your voice, so your Facebook posts, etc., I would say no, but I would also say it's okay to hire someone that creates curated content for you. So things like how-to articles or newsletter articles that don't necessarily have to be super personalized to your market. But you've got to layer it. You have to have some original content that's in your own voice and your own personality with your own face on it. Now, if you are absolutely tech unfriendly and you don't even know how to use Facebook, the challenge is when you have somebody run it for you, you're not the one that's having the conversations. You're not engaging. You're not physically there. And I think that poses some challenges. We've all seen those horror stories where people have said, I just outsource it. And then the company posts something that's terrible. And, the company gets in trouble because now this, outsourcer has created this mess for them. I think at the most basic, if you want somebody to create a few images for you, you want somebody to create a few articles for you, and then you are the one that's repurposing and breaking them up into bite-sized pieces or sharing them on a regular basis, that's okay. I'm not completely against curation. I am completely against 100% automation, where somebody's doing it all for you and you don't have any part or piece of it, and you're not there for the conversations that follow. So that was kind of a yes, no, but maybe answer. But the reality is I do think that we're all capable of just talking like we talk, like normal people on social media and through our marketing and our media, and we shouldn't discount that. It doesn't have to be whitewashed and made perfect and photoshopped. I think a lot of it can be our own voices, and we can do that on our own.
I think that's true. I agree 100%. Our company, we do a lot of content creation, from everything from franchise sales initiatives inside of, large real estate affiliations to, recruitment messaging, all the way down to, consumer facing content. But one thing that we will never do is we'll never speak as if we're speaking in your voice. We'll work with you to develop a content strategy, and address all these different questions and parts and pieces we've been discussing today. But, never will I agree to go in and say, okay, we're going to do 100% of absolutely everything for you. And you can never have that expectation that we would be able to speak in your voice and engage your audience more effectively than you can yourself. Yeah. And so we're always very careful about, what is the objective, who is the audience, and how do we feel like we can help you, to supplement or complement your overall, reaching marketing message. So you and I are 100% in agreement on that one. So we are at the end here. Melissa, if you will click to the next slide. I hope that everyone had some good takeaways from us today. We had a lot of fun having this conversation. And once again, I think we could talk all day and still not cover everything. Valerie and I would both love to connect with all of you. Here are a couple of our social channels, our websites that you can go in and follow with me, both myself and our company, Valerie directly on her side. I am going to share an image of that notching that my husband cut out of the wall with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my Instagram and my personal Facebook as well. So everybody, connect with me and you can take a look at that after this. Valerie, do you have any closing statements that you want to share before we jump off the air with everyone?
Oh, no, just be yourself and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, adjust. I think that's really where where you should be with content. Don't freak out about it too much, and be yourself. Find ways to engage with people that feels like it's authentic. And, that's really, really the root of it. So yeah. And thanks everybody for joining in. We've had a lot of people. I've seen a lot of fun comments, and, they're really, I see a lot of these names and I recognize them. And I know that these guys are ones that are working really hard to do great job with their marketing. So it's awesome that they're still learning and trying. And that's really all there is to it.
I think it's an ever-evolving process, with all the changes in technology and our changes in expectations, and it is always evolving. And so, just go with the flow, find where your strengths are, work inside of there, and you can grow and expand, as you move along. But it is true. Just be yourself. Just go for it. There's nobody that does you better than you.
That's right.
So everyone, we're going to be sending out a follow-up email. Melissa, if you could just quickly click on the next slide. We have a special offer. Everybody's going to get this in their email. So anybody that wants to work with the eMERGE team on executing a lot of what we've talked about today, we've got a great offer that includes some one-on-one coaching sessions, some discounts and things like that. You'll get an email on that. And then also, Melissa, if you'll click to the last slide, this is where a recording of this webinar as well as last month's will be. We have free downloads. So Valerie, we still have your awesome business planning workbook available for download. We're going to have those, that guide of 6 emails every real estate agent should be sending. We're going to have some great content for you guys available. So watch your inbox this afternoon. We'll be sending everything out. And thank you all so much for joining us. And Valerie, thanks so much once again. It's always so much fun to do this with you.
It is fun. It's a great topic. So hopefully people will reach out if they have questions. We're always here to help. Thanks so much for having me.
Definitely. And we'll see you guys next month. We're still on air. Melissa, can you get us off air?